Yeah, I mean, that just shows the volatility of the ASX, and hindsight investment always works. So, look, let's get into that project, the projects you have. I mean, we talked about Gidji, and I like Gidji. It has a lot of potential. Can be kind of a deceiving type of project.
Yep.
Being an exploration geologist, as we've always discussed, is that we're always optimists. We all think it's half glass full. But that optimism can cause some sort of misunderstanding in how we think, right? Because from my point of view, you got extensive strike mineralization, great. Series of high or low to high grade spectral grades, but then you don't have those deep intercepts that we would see. How do you narrate that to, say, a group of guys who understand that potential, a group of guys that says, great, but intercept's not flash, and then those that don't understand what 50 meters at XYZ grades mean?
I guess the first thing I would say is you have to look at the location first. So the location of the project, of where it sits. It sits on a major regional structure just outside Kalgoorlie. So, if you were dreaming of a project that you want to get your hands on, you want to be what we say, under the head frame, so to speak. You're next to one of the richest patches of dirt on the planet, and you're on the structure coming out of that patch of dirt. And by the dirt, I mean the super pit. So we're on this structure, we're close to a deposit, and then you want to look at, the amount of previous work that's been done there. And in our case, it had been minimal, like almost zero work, which was quite, unbelievable, I guess. And when we first looked at it, we went, surely this ground has been drilled over, because it's in between, the Super Pit and Paddington and Canada Belt, and it's on the highway. It's got the Goldfields Highway running over the top of it. So you look at it and go, okay, well, what's been done previously? And when you stripped out all the work that was ineffective, you're basically starting from scratch. So this is a bit that I guess I've been trying to get across to people, that don't assume that because it's right next to Kalgoorlie that it's been well explored before, because it hasn't. It's a greenfields project on the outskirts of Kalgoorlie. So, a lot of the work that we've done so far has been working up the targets. I think we're up to about 730 air core holes, and over a very small area. The whole strike length of the project's about 15 k's end to end, and we've really only worked in about a 4k strike length bit, which is Marylebone and the surrounding bits of that. By comparison, I think we've done 20 RC holes, but those 20 RC holes were done in one fence, in a stratigraphic fence, to basically look at the bedrock geology. We weren't really drilling those RC holes to hit mineralisation. We were doing it to basically put a fence line across, perpendicular to the geology, so we could actually understand the geology. So we hoped we might get some hits, but it was really, we want to see the geology and see what's going on. So the way I sort of explain it to people is, the majority of work we've done is the air core. We've done a tiny little bit of RC. So how I explain that is like, we're looking for a nuclear submarine. Okay, so the deposit is a nuclear submarine. Now, if you're looking for a nuclear submarine in the ocean, it's pretty small, right? And if you try and go drilling for the nuclear submarine, you'll go broke. But luckily, nuclear submarines give off radiation. So you're looking for that plume around the deposit. So the air core drilling is the shallow drilling, looking for that plume that then helps you focus in to go on the deeper target. And if you look at the three sort of main targets that we've outlined so far, you've got Marylebone, and you've got Blackfriars, and then you've got Highway. It's like a progression. We've done a fair bit of drilling at this one. We've done first pass at this one, and we haven't even drilled that yet. We've just finished drilling that one. So you're sort of working up each of these targets with this wider spaced air core drilling, so then you can then go in with a deeper drilling, and that's where we're at the moment. So I get the feeling that people think that the numbers that we get in the air core are the grade of the deposit. They're not. They're the sort of the vectors to bring you in close. We haven't hit the deposit yet. We're still drilling the sort of the plume above the deposit. One of the things that makes, or two of the things that make life a bit complicated at Gidji is you've got a stripped weathering profile. So when we talk about a stripped weathering profile, normally when you have regolith in WA, you have your fresh rock, and then, you know, millions of years ago it started weathering and weathering and weathering, and so you get this sort of oxidised zone on top of the fresh rock. And in a normal weathering profile, you get what's called a plume, so that any gold that's in the bedrock sort of goes and mobilises out, and you get a big sort of mushroom, and that gives you a nice wide target to use to focus in. But at Gidji, that profile's been stripped. So we only get a couple of metres of weathered material above the bedrock. So our target is quite narrow because it's been stripped off. So it means your drilling's got to be close together. The other thing is that there's this layer of transported material and a paleo channel sitting over the top of that bedrock. So we have to drill through 40, 50 metres of transported material that's barren, that's got nothing to do with the stuff underneath it, to actually get down to the stuff we're interested in. And then if we're lucky, we get a couple of metres of it. So when we first started drilling there, we were drilling at sort of 400 metre line spacing by 100 metre hole spacing, and you get a couple of sniffs, and then we go back and we fill that into like 200 metre line spacing by 50 metre drill spacing, and they'll get better. And so when our first hits were sort of like 0.5 grams to a gram at the biggest spacing, and then we went to 200 by 50, we were getting 1 to 3 grams, and then in some places we're down to sort of 100 by 25, and now we're getting 5 grams and 8 grams and 13 grams. But that's still not the actual ore body. That's the air core sort of smoke, or the plume above the bedrock. So we still really haven't tested the bedrock potential yet, because we were worried that early on we did a couple of RC holes because there were rigs available, and we drilled underneath, you know, a couple of sort of 1-2 gram hits, and we didn't get much. And then we went back and did air core, and it's like where we drilled the hole, the air core hits were better over here. So we were a bit worried that we'd sort of go chasing our tail a bit all over the place. So I've said a couple of times to people, it's like you've got like half a dartboard. So you're looking at half a dartboard and trying to work out where the bullseye is. And then you did a hole, and then you did more air core drilling here, and you actually went, oh, the bullseye's over here a bit. So it's been a bit frustrating that we haven't really focused in yet. I think the last air core program we did at Marylebone, I think that is really giving us some good targets now. Blackfriars is earlier. We were just done the second phase, and we're waiting on results from that. And then Highways, the first phase has just been done. So there's sort of like a progression of these targets. So to try and put it succinctly, we haven't hit the bedrock yet, right? The bedrock target, we've got about 2 kilometres of gold anomalism in air core at Marylebone, over 0.5 gram, over 1 gram. But the actual deposit, something like a Paddington, for instance, might only be a few hundred metres long, and the Paddington dolerite, which hosts the majority of the gold mineralisation at Paddington, is 30 metres wide. So if you're drilling holes 50 metres apart, and you've got a stripped weathering profile, then you might not see that unless you actually put a hole right on top of it. So that's why we're thinking we need to probably go down to 25 metres in some places to see if we can actually hit one of those bedrock hits. So
what you're saying is your challenge of using your nuclear submarine example is all that radiation plume has actually been taken away, and you may actually have to drill on top of the sub to hit it.
Yeah, so some of it's been taken away, it's been stripped off, but there is still some. Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is, we have if you imagine that plume comes up like this, so if you've got a full profile, the plume's this big, but if the profile's been stripped off to here, it's only this big. So you're still looking for the plume, but the plume's been made smaller by the fact that the regolith's been stripped off. So it's drill intensive. It's not as straightforward as just going out and banging an RC hole. And you've got to actually work out where to put the RC hole first. If you go too early with RC or diamond drilling, you can spend a lot of money and not find anything. So you've got to be systematic. You've got to try and not panic. It's a good model. In our latest presentation, I've got a nice little cartoon which compares what we see at Marylebone with some work that Wally Witt did, and you can see it looks exactly like Paddington, it looks exactly like Mount Charlotte, it looks exactly like Randall's. Those are pretty good prizes, so we just don't want to panic and go crazy with RC drilling until we actually worked out the target properly. And a good example of that is like with Blackfriars. When we started drilling across that, we said, okay, it looks like there's a mafic sediment contact here, and that's a good spot for a gold deposit. And the drilling was 400 by 100. It was their first pass drilling, but we had 1 gram hits at 400 metre spacing along this thing for a kilometre. So then we've just gone back 3 weeks ago, and we've done the infill. We've done the 200 by 50. Now, when we've done that 50 metre drilling, we've now seen that in between the mafic and the sediment is a little porphyry intrusion, because now we've got the resolution at 50 metre, not 100 metre. Now that is even better. So having that nice little rigid body in between those two rock types, that's a really good target. Now, it was already a pretty good target, but now it's even better. So that's a good example of how the resolution of the drilling can make a little bit of difference. And if you just went at 400 by 100 and then started peppering that with RC holes, you could drill a lot of RC holes and not find anything. But now we're sort of focused in on a bit of an area where we've got this intrusion. We haven't got the results yet. And then we went to Highway, which was a historic auger anomaly from 25 years ago that's never been drilled. And we looked at that and went, well, that looks a bit like Blackfriars. So we just did the first pass 400 by 100 where we could, because the road sort of goes through the middle. Well, guess what? We got the same. We got a contact and we've got a little intrusion on that contact. So I'm really hoping that there'll be gold numbers in that as well. So now you've got 3 of these parallel things. This is the most advanced at Marylebone. This has sort of had second pass, and this has got first pass. But this is why I've been saying for a while that I think there's a camp scale opportunity here.
I mean, when we talk about Gidji, obviously the price can be very big, which we can talk about a bit later down.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think Gidji needs to wake investors up? What is that? Well, drill hole, whatever. What is that?
Yeah, it's the bedrock intersections. I'm still loath to call it a discovery, because to me a discovery is an economic grade and width intersection. And at the moment, whilst we've got some really good numbers, a metre at 11.8 and a couple of metres at 7 and a couple of metres at 5 and a metre at 8, these are all 1 metre air core hits at the base of the transported material, top of the weathered zone. So that's not the ore body. We need to get an RC hit that goes beneath it. And I guess my rule of thumb is 50 gram metres is something that is potentially economic, depending on the depth. But a 50 gram metre hit, so 50 metres at 1 or 20 at 2 or something like that, is I'd start going, okay, this is a potential ore body, and that's what it needs. I think people are not valuing where we are in the process, and I get that, but you don't get the amount of gold that we've got in the air core without some source to it, some bedrock source to it.
You seem to have a lot of smoke. Is that what you're trying?
Well, it's more than smoke.
Yeah.
We've got a kilometre long at like plus 2 grams, with a lot of 5 gram hits in there. So it's more than smoke. Smoke in air core is like 1/4 to a gram. This is more than smoke. I mean, we've even, I don't know, it's a bit of a red herring, but we've even looked at it and gone, could this actually even be like a supergene deposit? So Panglo, up the road near Paddington, that was a supergene deposit. So it was no bedrock to it, but it was still like 140,000 ounce supergene deposit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, we could have something like that, but we haven't looked at that because that's not the prize.
Yeah.
The prize is a big bedrock deposit.
Okay. So would that be, I mean, I guess that could lead to the answer to my next question, was I was going to say, what can Gidji be, the worst case scenario, sort of okay case, and best case scenario?
Well, I reckon worst case scenario is you could have one deposit that's a few 100,000 ounces, right?
Yep.
That's worst case scenario. And
economic resource.
Yeah, economic, a couple 100,000 ounces. And if you compare it to something like Andy Well, the initial resource at Andy Well was 250,000 ounces. And it was only a strike length of about 200 metres because of the grade. Yep. So you could easily fit something that's a couple 100,000 ounces at a reasonable grade at Gidji. That's sort of worst case, I think. I wouldn't be very happy with that. It'd be okay. You'd do a deal with someone and you'd probably mine it as part of one of the other existing guys, but that would be, I think, it'd be an okay outcome for where our company is, but I think I'd be disappointed with that. I really think that the prize there is a camp. Right, we've only tested that middle sort of third of the project. We haven't even tested Barara North yet, and that's got the same geology as Marylebone. Okay, so I've sort of been saying to people that I guess the comparison would be a Bardock, or Bardock's probably the best example because it's in the same structure, and it's only just north, 50 k's north of us or something. But at Bardock, there's a couple of main deposits, Aphrodite, it's 1.7 million ounces. I think Excelsior is about 0.8 million ounces or something like that. But I got a hold of a good document and it shows that there's about 15 different deposits at Bardock. All different geology, all different structure, different scales. I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a camp at Gidji. And camps will normally have a big deposit, some smaller ones, and some ones that are not economic. And so I think that's the potential there. So we've already got 3 things that look like with further drilling they could turn into deposits. Marylebone, Blackfriars, and Highway. And again, that's still in that little middle bit. We haven't looked at Barara North. We haven't looked at the jog further south. 8 Mile, the extension thing to Runway. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a camp. We're looking for, I think, what's the total? The total resource at the Bardock camp is about 3 million ounces, I think, maybe a bit more, 3.5 million ounces. And as I said, there's a couple of big deposits, Aphrodite and Excelsior, and then there's some smaller ones. And Paddington is the same. Paddington's not one deposit. Paddington's about 10 deposits, That's the potential we've got at Gidji. But we've just started. Some of these things, like Bardock, has got 20, 30 years of history. Paddington was discovered Paddington was discovered in like 82 or something. Yeah. We've been there 18 months. And the other thing is most of those other projects were big company projects. So they were just pumping money at it, drilling and drilling and drilling. We've just started. We've been there 15 months, 18 months. We've done 700 air core holes. We've done 20 RC holes, and most of them are in one section. We've done 3 diamond holes. It's really the beginning of the process. And so what the challenge for us is to do the systematic exploration work to uncover this thing. And be patient and systematic and work through the targets. And that's a really frustrating thing for the market a lot of the time. But having the money means we can do it.
Yeah. I guess, the market needs to be taught or to be led to understand that I have this saying, mineral exploration is not an overnight process.
No.
It is a long process. And most of the major finds that we have has felt like it's overnight because they've just taken it from someone who's been working on it for a much longer time.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, even De Grey. So I put a slide in one of my presentations a while ago, and it was an air core snapshot that De Grey had about Hemi. I think it's from April 2020, and it's just the air core when they were drilling Falcon and Yukon and that. And if you look at the size and the shape and the tenor of the air core anomalies at Hemi back in April 2020, they're very similar to what we see at Marylebone. So if anyone wants to go look at that, and it's a very good comparison. Now the difference is they went in hard with RC, and that was the key. And so that's the turning point, right? Going from that air core drilling to the RC drilling. We haven't done that yet because we're still trying to flesh out the edges of the thing because we haven't closed it off yet. So, but as I said, we've got the money. We can accelerate the drilling now. We can sort of spend the money on that drilling at Gidji without neglecting our other projects now.
If you have that thought, and in your presentation at RU, you had this diagram of the Barara Shear.
Yeah.
You had the Super Pit, you had Canal Bell, and you had Paddington there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you look at that, you can't help but think that, you could be, as he's talking about, that camp style thing, right? So when you look at it, how do you feel about that thought that you could be that close, you could be this? Does that keep you awake at night?
Yeah, it does. Like I've done 3 IPOs, and obviously Dore was really successful on the back of Andy Well. And in the lead up to the placement, a couple of people saying, well, how does this compare to Dore or whatever? I said, well, these projects that we've got in Miramar are better than what we had in Dore. Now, Andy Well was a special case. It was, something I'd worked on with Western Mining, and Western Mining had basically walked away from the project because it didn't meet the economic threshold of Western Mining, which was a huge company, but also other things had happened. Marbo had come in, everyone was heading off to West Africa. So it was a special case where they just walked away from walk-up drill targets. But Andy Well was only ever going to be a narrow, high-grade underground mine with a very short mine life. And it was basically, there was a couple of lodes, but it's really one deposit. There's no other deposits outside the main Wilbur duty lodes, right? That's a lot different to what we see at Gidji, So I want to, as an exploration geologist, without sort of putting it too bluntly, I don't want to stuff Gidji up because I'm being driven by some external market forces. I look at it and go, this is a great project, this has got huge potential. I talk about it in the real estate sort of analogy, so it's like the cheapest house on the best street. It's got the most, renovation potential, if you like, It's got minimal value at the moment, but the potential value of it is huge with the work, with the systematic work. And there's always this temptation to go for the low-hanging fruit and try and get the numbers to keep the market happy. But that's a very short-term view. And as we see, this week someone will like gold, and then next week someone will really like lithium, and then someone will like tungsten, and then someone will like this. And if you keep chasing all these short-term things, you get distracted from actually the main game, which is working out what the potential is of the project. So we've just got to stick to the knitting, I guess, is the terminology, and work through the targets, work them up so that we can test them, and be systematic about it. I think this is a great opportunity for the company. Again, use the comparison with a Bardock. They found, a couple of decent deposits there, got taken out for 150 million by someone that wants to develop their projects. Apollo had about just over 1 million ounces, a long way out of Kalgoorlie, and they got taken out. They had a bidding war. I think they got taken out for 180 million. So if we can even prove up 1 million ounces at Gidji that are economic, then potentially, we're a takeover target at that same sort of price. And with a market cap of 10 million.
8 today.
Well, 8 today. You look at a 10 bag, whatever. But what the thing that frustrates me about the market at the moment is that it seems like people want the discovery valuation on a company without the discovery. They want to get that valuation just by talking about it. And I realise that you actually have to do the work and you have to make the discovery. You can't just say, oh, we think it's there. You have to find it. So that's what we got to do.
When we look at Gidji, I mean, we've talked extensively, and there's a good reason why. I think it's one of those projects that are very underrated. You know, I mean,
I agree.
We talked with Galileo Mining, and we talked the same thing. You know, they had many hits and misses, and we just talked about stayed on track, and Brad and his team has potentially could pull off a new province down there.
That's really good.
That's kudos to them, because that's what you guys are all about, right? The ones that chase it. So with Gidji at this point in time, obviously we've talked about, you know, all these things. Have you got a model in mind, or you're thinking, you know, have you got enough information to say, you know, guys, I think this could be the style?
Well, yes and no. I've got a model in mind. You know, the model for Marylebone is Paddington, and then the model for Blackfriars is Aphrodite, and the model for Highway is probably something similar. But a model by itself doesn't make a deposit. You got to test the model and work it out. But
you test it out after you discover it.
Well, and I did this paid gold lunch the other week, and you know, I was sitting next to Andy Beckwith from De Grey, and you're saying, you know, you have to be a bit careful of models. Models are good to a point, but you also have to be careful of them. You know, these guys have made this discovery up in the Pilbara, which, according to a lot of smart people at Western Mining, say is got no gold there.
Yeah.
So the models are great, but they also can restrict you to a view. Tropicana. The reason that Tropicana was found by IGO is because Western Mining said it's the wrong rocks, right? So
Gold Road's got the
Gold Road's same.
gold.
Yeah, it's, you know, wrong part of the Yilgarn or whatever, wrong rocks, or Julmar, wrong rocks, right? But as a geochemist for a long time, it was good. I got to be very empirical, and what I mean by that is I wasn't focused so much on the model. I was focused by what the data was telling me. So if we do a soil sampling program, we've got a gold anomaly. You go, hey, there's a gold anomaly, we've got to follow it up. Someone else might say, oh, it's the wrong rocks, it's the wrong part. It's like, hang on, you can't ignore this, right? So models are good in that. I guess I said the other day, I said, you've got to have enough experience to recognise the similarities. So the similarity between Marylebone and Paddington, or between Blackfriars and Aphrodite. But the reason that deposit hasn't been found yet is just because it's slightly different to that one.
Yeah.
So you've got to recognise the similarities, but also be open to the differences. So, you know, Malina, De Grey Hemi, looks like this, but it's different because it's in the Pilbara. Or it's different because it's related to granites, because it's intrusion related. But that's similar to something else, right? It's similar to something in Alaska, or it's similar to something in Nevada. So you've got to be in the right place at the right time, with the right project, and then recognise the similarities, and then get out there and test it. But then not be too driven by the model. I think we've got a fantastic opportunity at Gidji, and some part of me a lot of times goes, we should get rid of all our other projects and just focus on Gidji, because that is a good enough project for a company to have by itself. But we've got all these other projects, which we'll talk about in a minute, we haven't tested yet. And I really hate picking something up because of a really good idea and then not testing it before I get rid of it. Because guarantee, if you get rid of it before you've tested it, the next guy is going to come along and find it, and you're kicking yourself. So I don't want to do that either. So there's this balance.